Okay, everybody, before we get started on this episode, had a couple things we wanted to say. First off, we just broke 1,000 listeners. So thank you to everyone who's listened to this point. We really appreciate you, especially all you Mixies out there.
1,000 listens in under 10 episodes. That's more than 100 listens an episode.
And we appreciate all of you.
You know who's not listening? Satva.
They're not.
Bunch of jerks.
Also, just going forward, if you haven't followed the podcast, please follow. If you haven't rated it yet, we've currently got a 5-star rating, which we're very proud of, and we'd like to keep that up. And tell any friends about it. It's fun. It's fun to tell friends about podcasts. Everybody loves doing it. It's a really cool thing to do. So tell all your friends.
And if you see Rod or I, ask for a little gimmick stickers, because our stickers are available, and really cool business cards.
That's right.
So spread the word. Second of all, this one is a bear. It is content heavy. It is a long one, but it's all really great information. It's a really good conversation with someone that's way more educated than Rod and I. So give it a listen, give it a whirl. It'll be a good time. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
How to make a mixtape.
Now, the making of a good compilation tape is a very subtle art, many do's and don'ts. First of all, you're using someone else's poetry to express how you feel. This is a delicate thing. You gotta kick it off with a killer, grab attention. Then you gotta take it up a notch. But you don't want to blow your wad, so then you gotta cool it off a notch. There are a lot of rules.
Hello.
I'm frantically scribbling my songs.
Figuring out your answers as we start.
C.
Sibilance.
Yeah, scrambling.
Welcome to How to Make a Mixtape podcast. My name is Roderick. I'm here with Don, as always. How you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. We got to spend a bunch of time together recently, which is nice.
I miss you.
I miss you too. I missed you before we saw each other. Now I miss you that we're not seeing each other in person.
I know. But you know what? I'm not hating a Wednesday recording.
It's kind of nice. The sun's still up here, which is cool.
I mean, look at the summertime vibes I got right here. I need to cut the lawn.
It's great. I learned a lot about you this past week or so. I learned that you have that entire weird speech from Ace Ventura: Pet Detective memorized, and it's one of the greatest experiences of my life listening to you do that while eating ice cream.
I don't know why that is stuck in there. Like I said, when I delivered the Heinz Skits Velvet speech, if I could fill that space with anything more relevant, I could be pretty impactful to something. Yeah. But instead it's full with an entire scene from Ace Ventura.
Yeah, like those millions of neurons in your brain could be doing so much more, but instead they have the weird inside the dolphin tank speech from Ace Ventura. Mm-hmm.
If you want to talk to the dolphin, you talk to me. I
love it, though. I was dying. I was crying, laughing.
Yeah.
But, it was nice seeing you this past week. It's nice to be recording again. I actually have 2 questions for you as we get going in this. And I'm going to tell you right up front, they have nothing to do with music or mixtapes.
Okay.
True or false? You have recently been driving and run out of gas on the side of the road at like midnight.
100% true. No qualms. Here's the deal. I told my van mates, we are going to run out of gas. I prepared them for the inevitable. I knew when we started the journey that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
I made everybody aware there is a high likelihood that we are going to run out of gas. And we did. And thank you to the individuals that came to our rescue. I'll shout them out. Cassidy and PK, you guys are lifesavers. I hope you listen. Thank you for the most complicated gas can that I've ever used in my life. My entire luggage smelled like gas from getting gas all over my pants.
Can I ask you, how many times in your life have you been driving and run out of gas?
Maybe 2.
Yeah.
Total. That might have been the 3rd. Yeah, not any more than that.
I don't think I've run out of gas since I was in college, but I do remember doing it once or twice in college for sure because I was poor, Yeah, I literally had no money, and it was a game, not a game by choice.
Not a fun one.
No, not a fun one. And not by choice, but it became a game of like, can I make it to my next paycheck on what I've got in my tank? And sometimes the answer was no. And I had a pickup truck that had a gas can in the back permanently because it happened enough that I had to have my own gas can.
Oh, okay. So you ran out a lot.
It wasn't a lot. Well, it's one of those things it happens once now you own a gas can because you had to buy one. So, but it happened more than once. It was more than once and less than, I'm going to say less than 5 times, but probably only 2 or 3, but I don't remember. But it's been, man, 20 years since I ran out of gas. So good job.
For sure.
Follow-up question. Question number 2. Mm-hmm. Have you recently eaten tater tots and chicken tenders out of a trash can at a gas station?
100%. No qualms.
I love that.
I don't know how long they were in the garbage can, but we had hit that point in the day. I think I don't know, what time were you up? 5:30 that day?
5:30 in the morning, something like that.
So we were up at 5:30 and you hit a point of running out of gas and delirium where you just hope for some like halfway decent gas station food, and you get there and the gas station has just disposed of the gas station food. Yeah. Just disposed within the last 10 minutes. So it's fresh on top.
So you're saying it was clean trash food?
It was clean trash food. CTF is what I call that, clean trash food.
Yeah.
And so, I may or may not have partaken in a few tater tots and chicken tenders from the garbage can. And you know what? Just as good as if they had come out of the heating case.
A little bit of CTS never hurt anybody. You know, it happens enough that you have an acronym for it. Even though
CTF, clean trash food.
Well, I love that for you. I wasn't there to witness either of those events, but I've seen video from both.
That whole situation was a real shit show. But you know what? We made memories for the rest of our lives, and that's what's most important.
You sure did. And I'm glad it happened to you and not me. But at the same time, it looked like a real good time. If those things are going to happen to you, it looked like a fun crew to be with, and it looked like a fun time. Are you excited for the guest today? A bit of a special guest.
Oh, man. You know what? I was really you know what? Here, a couple of things. Number one, I've got to shout out my mom because it was Joni that came up with this idea. I came up with the name, but Joni came up with the idea, which is hysterical that my 70-whatever-year-old mother listens to the podcast. And it's like, you know what would be great if you guys did this? And I was like, I think my immediate text response was like, no, I'm not doing that.
No,
and
Mom.
Then like the more
you turn into like a 13-year-old again. You're like, no, sure. Mom. Ugh.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the more time that went by, I'm like, shit, this is kind of a good idea. Damn it, Joni, way to have the best ideas.
Well, by the time it got to me, you were excited about it. You were. It was a text. Well, no, you called me. It wasn't even. We text each other ideas, and you called me for this one, and you literally said, "I'm so excited about this. I had to call you. We should do this."
Yeah, and I'm happy the way it came together. I wish it came together differently. But I'm still happy the way that it came together.
We'll tease it without giving it away until the guest comes on. This was going to be our first 4-person episode. It didn't work out to be a 4-person episode. I was going to have a special guest and Don was going to have a special guest, and it was going to be 4 people. It didn't work out. And that's okay. It's still going to be good. But yes, it didn't come together as we ideally hoped it would, but I think it's still going to be really good. And I'm excited to talk about this. This is the fastest I came up with a list ever. And we'll probably talk about this when our guest comes on, but I'd never put together my 4 songs quicker than I did for this.
I'm excited to hear what the songs were that you picked and why. But also, I mean, again, we've talked about it on damn near every episode. My shit's all over the board. I am covering the gamut in terms of some of this stuff.
I feel like I kind of am. Yeah, a bit. Well, it'll be interesting. I'm excited. I have some questions for the guests too. Some personal questions before we get started. Yeah. So
great.
You know,
it's exactly what I want is questions with the guest.
Yeah, it's what I want. I feel like we should just go ahead and get started because I have questions.
All right, let's do the damn thing.
We should bring the guest in. Yeah,
let's do it.
Hey, Donnie.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored. That's a new one.
Yep. No, and I'll tell you this much. The sponsor couldn't be a bigger bummer because it's definitely not Sotfo or Casper. But if you do have a small business that you need advertisement for, there's no better way to advertise than stickers.
Yep.
Right?
Slappers, sticky boys.
Stick them on light posts to get people to put them on their car. And small businesses should be supporting small businesses. So the official sticker sponsor of How to Make a Mixtape is a brand called Little Gimmicks. And Little Gimmicks, it's at Little Gimmicks on Instagram. That's your primary mode of communication right now. It is a small business owned by a buddy that's killing it in the sticker game. No minimum orders. You can order as few stickers as you'd like. High quality outdoor graded vinyl. Quality controlled by one person. They claim they're made with love, but I'm pretty confident they don't wash their hands. Quick turnaround time. They are in the Midwest, so they got some pride about where they're from. And other than that, I said in the reply, as they were giving me information to talk about Little Gimmicks, I said, should I make sure I tell them how much of a wiener you are? And he said, yep, really lean into how much of a dummy I am. So if you want that person to be responsible for stickers to advertise your small business.
Yeah, if you want some sweet stickers by a big old dummy, go to Little Gimmicks and get those stickers.
Little Gimmicks, at Little Gimmicks on Instagram. Get yourself some custom stickers made.
Do they get a discount if they mention us?
They do. Yeah, it's 10% off. You get 10% off your order.
Oh, yeah.
If you mention how to make a mixtape when you contact him on Instagram, and he'll make you some damn stickers. We got some stickers coming out soon.
Yeah, and you know what I was stoked about is he's doing die cut stickers, which some places don't do. I mean, you know what I mean? Like you can get some cool shit.
Yeah, full color. They look awesome.
I'm stoked from him. Big old dummy doing big old cool stuff. So thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Little Gimmicks.
Thanks, Little Gimmicks.
Thanks for sponsoring this episode.
Appreciate it.
Back to the episode.
How to make a mixtape.
And couldn't be more excited for our special guest today. Thanks so much for tuning in. So the topic of the podcast is, it's a family affair. And our special guest today is none other than Dr. PCF herself, my sister, Krista Longtin. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I feel like I should tell everybody what PCF stands for.
Yeah, it definitely stands for, okay, so in total maturity as a young adult, I thought it was really creative to call my sister Pista instead of Krista. And Dr.
Clever.
PCF is because, yep, for sure, super witty. Dr. PCF is Dr. Pista Crapface. And so much so that when she earned her doctorate in communications, I got her an engraved pen that says Dr. PCF.
That's very sweet of you, Donnie.
Yeah, for sure. So Dr. Pista Crapface, welcome to the podcast. Happy to have you.
Oh, thank you. So glad to be here.
The theme is bands or artists with siblings in the band. That's what we're going for.
All right, I'm ready.
So Rod's got questions for you before you get started.
A few. First one's just for my knowledge. Older sister?
Older sister.
So then the first question is, how influential were you on Donnie's musical taste?
I think that he would say not very, but I think the answer is very.
I disagree. I agree. It is very, very influential.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
that
for sure.
That makes me feel pretty good.
I think you've referenced it before, Donnie, that you were influenced by her. And I don't remember what episode, but I think you did say that. I think you've given her credit. Maybe it got edited out. I'm not sure.
I would hope it would.
Well, I mean, like, Rod, you have an older sister, right? Is that
Younger
right?
sister.
Younger sister.
Yeah.
So as the older sibling, do you sometimes feel like you have no idea sort of what your siblings took from you? Like, I think, like, I have no idea what Donnie took from me, besides the things that, like, all the attributes that all my family has.
Yeah, I think I felt that way for a while, but I had a conversation at one point with my sister where she basically told me I was very influential, and there was a very specific moment to where I influenced her musical taste. And
That's awesome.
But however, without that conversation, I don't think I would have had any idea. I would have been guessing. But apparently, when I was a senior in high school, I gave her a couple like mix CDs of bands that I wanted her to get into, and it worked, I guess. And I think at the time there was too much of that sibling I don't like you or rivalry or whatever to admit that she actually cared about it. But, you know, later down the road, she's like, yeah, a lot of what I listen to is because of those CDs that you gave me. So
do you know what some of the bands are still that she still listens to? Does she are there some that are still really deeply rooted?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, yes and no. So like her and her husband's like favorite band is influenced by those CDs I gave, but weren't on that CD. So it was a lot of like Saves the Day and stuff like that. But her and her husband's favorite band is Bayside, which is right in that same vein. Yeah. There was no Bayside on those CDs, but I think that got her into that pop punk emo thing. And
there was gateway drugs on those CDs that led to Bayside.
I gave her the gateway music. Exactly.
I love that.
Well, and cool that you had the conversation, right? I think that's one of the things that, like, even in my classes, I talk with my students about the idea that, like, you know, we had you guys have had the conversation about what's on in your parents' car, right? Mm-hmm. Like that kind of same concept, that it's sometimes like cool if you have that opportunity to have that conversation, because so much of our childhood, you know, is shaped or informed by the people around us, what we listen to, et cetera. And so it's really cool to like simply have the conversation, right? To be like, hey, you got me into this band. I love them. They're awesome.
And I can't pretend like she didn't get me into the Spice Girls. Like, the Spice Girls are fantastic, and I would never have listened to that as like a teenage boy. I would have been like, screw that. But she was blaring it so much in the house, and I couldn't help but be like, yeah, this is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, it's super infectious.
It goes both ways.
Poops, if you had to throw it out, what would be playing in Mom's car and what would be playing in Dad's car?
I feel like Mom listened to like a lot of like the middle of the road, soft rock mix. Mm-hmm. So it's like all the songs by songs on Delilah.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Like just a lot of terrible late 80s, early 90s ballads, like a lot of Christopher Cross.
Oh, yeah.
And then Dad, I feel like he had like a fair amount of sort of traditional, WLUP in Chicago, classic rock. So some Creedence, we'd get a little bit of Journey every now and then. But we did, of course, have the Buckingham's Greatest Hits, always available to us at any moment in time. Very influential as a child. I still know all the words.
Rod, were the Buckinghams big in Indiana? Did you guys dip your toe into the Buckinghams?
Not really. No. Okay. I'm aware of them now, but no. Yeah. Donnie, can you tell our audience what album cover I saw on a coffee shop wall that I sent you a picture of?
Well, hold on. It doesn't mean, I think it's important to understand where we were in the middle of fucking nowhere in the mountains of Washington State.
Even more impressive. Middle of nowhere.
There just so happened to be a Pure Prairie League album cover posted on the wall. Like, and Rod so braggadociously was like, look what I just saw. It's like, oh.
All right. Okay. Krista, follow-up question. Maybe should have been the intro question, but I'm curious what it was like growing up with this guy.
Donnie was a generally good kid. He really loved to like tinker around in the garage. Like, was a big ramp maker for his skateboard and BMX bike, and just kind of would make a ramp, fall off the ramp, and have to rebuild the ramp. My partner Terry recently reminded me of the mural that he painted on your wall, Donnie, that I had kind of forgotten existed. Yeah. We had a mom that was really kind and would like kind of let us do whatever we wanted to the walls of our rooms, and so I had an artistic boyfriend at the time who painted up our walls and stuff. And his was like, big yin and yang sort of. Totally.
Like when yin yangs were the coolest thing.
Oh yeah. I remember.
Very of the time.
Sure.
Yeah. Donnie and I were left alone a lot as kids, and that makes it sound like we didn't have great parents. We had great parents. I think some of it was just sort of the time, you had two working parents.
Sure.
Just hung out at home, during the late 80s and early 90s. We watched a lot of cartoons together. It was one of the things that I remember as young kids.
The Gummy Bears, Rod, do you remember?
I absolutely remember.
You had to like run home to make sure to get in your episodes of Inspector Gadget after school.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, we really like I said, I remember us having sort of usual kid fights. I remember us getting one another out of trouble when we needed to, but generally speaking, he was actually not a terrible guy to live with.
Listen to that. Listen to your sister being nice to you.
You know what?
Donnie.
It's crazy because I view myself now looking back as a real pain in the ass. Like, it's really funny. Have you ever seen those like funny clips or meme videos like on social media where it's like, this is totally my brother. And like you push the door open and then you fart and slam it closed and run away. I was 100% that brother.
Oh, 100% that kid. Absolutely.
Every fucking time.
That kid.
That's what I imagine. So
Krista's got a friend over, and I like run past the door and fart and like run into my room and slam the door every single time.
That sounds right. Well, you miss it. We do the intros before our guests come on, Krista, but I received a video recently of your brother eating chicken tenders and tater tots out of a gas station trash can. So
yeah,
that's on brand.
That tracks.
Yeah. So that's still who he is. All right. Well, that gives me some insight into a young Donnie. Yeah. I appreciate that.
So, and I'll say this, as far as growing up with Krista, it is a massive shadow she casts. And I think the thing that was so gnarly is that we couldn't function further on opposite sides of the spectrum. Krista, again, super intelligent to a frightening degree. Thanks, and I feel like I'm pretty well locked into the common sense side of things. So again, my common joke was always like, there was something silly I used to say around like, Krista will be able to tell you how the map was generated and why the map was generated and all of these details, but I'll be the one that'll read the map to you to get us to wherever we're going. Where it was just intelligence and common sense. We were the yin and yang of that for sure. So, but I think we've both come a little ways in both of those. One of the things that I said that was important that I wanted to kick this off with is go ahead and tell everybody, what the hell is your title of your job? What do you actually do?
I'm an assistant dean for faculty affairs and professional development for the Indiana University School of Medicine and an associate professor of obstetrics and gynecology and communication studies.
Totally.
Jesus Christ.
For sure. Yeah. That's Krista's title. So with that, let's go ahead and kick off the mixtape.
Yeah. Yeah, Jesus.
It is very odd to run into medical students at concerts. Kind of more odd than when I used to teach kind of regular undergraduates, more like running into med students, they're like, and they'll be like, Dr. Longtin, can we get a selfie? It's a little bit weird.
Well, we said this off air, but I feel like bringing it up because I like to insert myself into conversations that have nothing to do with me. But you work for IUPUI, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And I just told Donnie that I attended IUPUI for my freshman year of college. And we discovered that one of my professors is a friend, a colleague? Yeah.
A close friend, absolutely. Yeah, my really good friend and colleague, Adam Surek, who still works on campus. Adam took a stint off campus for a minute to become a pastry chef, then came back to campus and now is working as an academic advisor in the School of Art. Really good friend, great music friend. Adam and I often have lots of conversations about music, what we're listening to, et cetera. His cousin actually just was one of the primary writers on Sufjan Stevens' new Tony-nominated musical. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, super cool, Rod, that we have that connection. I'm sure IUPUI looks really different now than it did when you were there.
I'm sure it did. And he's the only professor I would have remembered because he was the only professor I liked. And that's not a knock on the faculty. That's more where I was personally. No,
it's a knock on the faculty.
No,
they hired Krista.
I was a reluctant college student at the time. I did really well in high school and didn't really know what I wanted to do in college. And so I just kind of went to IUPUI because I lived close by. And Adam was the one professor I remember because I really enjoyed his class and I did really well in his class. I still have a CD-ROM of my like midterm and final projects for that class. And I'm sure the work is terrible, but I have it. And then I only was there a year and a left, but I do remember Adam. So if you're listening, Adam, you don't remember me, but hi, I took one or two of your classes in the computer graphics technology field. So small world.
Dang.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. I'm sorry my sister couldn't be on as well, but it's great to have you. It's going to be really interesting to hear the musical choices between the two of you. I'm very curious if there's any overlap, which leads me to the rules. I'm going to go ahead and read the guidelines for the mixtape based on the high fidelity compilation tape guidelines. So here we go. You got to have a killer opening track that grabs the listener's attention. Each song should flow smoothly to the next, creating a seamless listening experience. The mixtape should have a good balance of different genres, tempos, and moods. Variety keeps things interesting. The mixtape should tell a story or convey a specific emotion. It should take the listener on a journey. It can't be too obvious, but it can't be too obscure either, unless that's the theme. And finally, and most importantly for this podcast, you cannot double up on songs by the same artist. So, Krista, you get the choice of going first, second, or third in the round.
Wow, that's an important choice. I will go second.
It's a first, Donnie. We've got a first. We've got a first time.
First middle time.
Which
so
I think it's me. Yeah, I think it's me. Okay.
It is you.
All right. Oh, Donnie, we forgot. We skipped over. You've got a game for this episode.
Yeah, we came up with a fun game. Okay, so you will tell the siblings of the artist of the group. Yeah. You have to, me and the other two participants will try and guess the group if we don't know who the siblings are.
Okay.
And then also we're going to try and guess the song that the person picked from the group.
Perfect. Well, this feels like an alley-oop of a first round.
I think I'm going to lose my first first song out. Go ahead, Rod.
Maybe. So I'm just going to go first names. I think it's so obvious. So I'm going to go. What do you mean? Hold on.
Go ahead.
All right. First choice for the Family Affair mixtape. Liam and Noel.
Oh, that's easy.
All right. So it's for sure Oasis. Great job.
It's Oasis.
And I'm stoked to still have my first choice.
Okay.
And I'm going to guess the song. I don't think you would do something huge, but I'm going to say Champagne Supernova. Crapsto, what do you say?
I say Wonderwall.
It is 100% Champagne Supernova.
I'm learning my buddy here.
You are learning about me. Why did you pick that one? I feel like it was a single and it was big, but it was their sixth. It was the sixth single off that album. Like it was not like one of the early ones. Why did you think I was going to pick that?
I think it leans the most indie and the least pop. Whereas, I mean, I think we can say that Oasis is kind of a pop rock band, maybe a little alt rock, but Champagne Supernova feels very, very indie. And I think that you lean a bit more indie rock than.
I will cop to that. I don't think that's how I would have described it, but I don't think there's anything incorrect about what you just said.
Agreed 100% as the, long-time listener, first-time caller of the podcast.
Would you say you're a mixie?
I would say that Rod would choose, but you don't want to choose with your first one. You don't want to choose something that folks don't know, right?
Right.
You want
That's
to
fair.
choose a song that folks have heard before.
Yeah.
I think Champagne Supernova is a good bet for just about everybody, even if you're not a huge Oasis fan.
I will tell you my justification for choosing this song, and it might be bullshit. It might be me just selling a choice after the fact. I think from the beginning it was going to be the song, but in my mind, I always found it interesting that Noel wrote all the lyrics and music and his brother was singing his lyrics. So every time I hear an Oasis song, that's kind of in the back of my mind is like Liam is singing his brother's words. And that feels the most, that feels the least important on this song, which is why I did this. I guess I'm saying I did this for Liam. Because this song doesn't feel personal at all. The lyrics of this song are so weird, 90s ubiquitous, like just they don't really mean anything, and yet they probably mean a lot to a lot of people. But, slowly walking down the hall faster than a cannonball, like that's just very 90s, like nonsense lyrically. Like Liam can sing that and not know what the hell Noel was talking about when you wrote it. And fair enough. Versus something that's a little more on the nose, where it's interesting that a brother is singing another brother's lyrics.
I love some of the performances. Have you seen some of the performances where the writer brother sings the songs? Where Noel sings the songs. Those are some of my favorite ones. Where Liam's kind of a shit, so like he's like the one that causes most of the problems. Yeah. So to see Noel just like out there, I can't remember if it was like a VH1 Behind the Music or something where it was like. It was Liam performing all the songs because Noel was being a little shit on the side of the stage and like crying about something. And I was like, this is as good. I don't know that we need this brother, but he's a hell of a front man.
Yeah. I saw Noel. So Noel's new band is called Noel Gallagher and the High Flying Birds.
Yeah.
And I saw them open for the Pumpkins a few years ago. And he does like a half a set of songs from his new band. And the back half of his set was just Oasis songs. And Liam is a little more like snotty punk, he's got like a slight bit of Sex Pistols in him. Yeah. But Noel, it basically sounded like Oasis. I mean, it was slightly less snotty, which does add to what Oasis is. But I mean, Noel performed those songs pretty fucking well, like it felt like the closest I'm ever going to get to seeing Oasis live.
Are they done?
Well, I think that's one of the things that's interesting about a band like Oasis and, all these bands that have siblings in them, right? Is like sometimes I think what's interesting about them is the conflict, is the complexity of the relationship between the people that are singing the songs, right? And that comes through, I think, when you listen to the High Flying Birds, like you lose a little bit of that complexity, you lose a little bit of like hearing that relationship and that tension, but they're still just kick-ass songs. Yeah. And I think that's probably what you hear, when he does do the stuff by himself.
It's really interesting you said that, Krista, because like I've watched / listened to enough things about Oasis. Like conflict was at the core of that band. So like Liam was actually the first one in bands as a singer. He was in a bunch of bands, and then Noel learned how to play guitar and started writing songs and was basically Liam's roadie in Liam's bands. And basically got jealous and like pushed his way into Liam's bands. And then eventually they started Oasis. So there's like conflict from the beginning. Like, I'm the talented one here. I write music and play guitar, but you're the one that's actually touring in bands and doing this shit. Right. And then when they had the whole like Blur Oasis Britpop battle thing. So that's a whole conflict thing, right? And then it was all about Liam and Noel absolutely hating each other, but still going on with the band. It felt like Oasis could only exist with conflict, and then the conflict brimmed over and ended the band. And no, Donnie, to your earlier question, I don't.
You think there'll be like a tour that will go 6 stops and then they'll go on a hiatus and they won't do like the last 12 stops of the tour? Is that what we can anticipate?
That's if any, that might actually be poetic. Like I don't actually think they will ever get back together, but if they did, that's probably what'll happen. And I hope that does happen. They only fulfill half the gigs because they just decide, nope, can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I just don't like you.
It says that the last time that they were active was 2009. That was the last time they did anything. Is that when their last album came out?
Right
Probably.
before that.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, but I think, okay, like I'll put on my, Dr. PCF hat here for a second to talk about like sibling relationships and how they sort of fit together, right? And like part of the reason why that works is that you sort of get to know somebody else well enough to know that you fill in their gaps, right? So like, we talked about at the beginning of the set, the idea that Donnie and I are really different, but that we know what gaps we fill in for one another. In some ways, that's what happens with Oasis, right? Like when it's awesome because they can fill in gaps for one another. But when it's really terrible because you know exactly what buttons to push.
Yeah, they know exactly how to really get under the other person's skin.
Here's what's perfect about that is that I didn't really listen to a single fucking word she said because all I can think about is getting her hat made that says Dr. PCF. So that she can literally put on her Dr. PCF hat.
Dude, you're such a little asshole, brother. Like, I
can admit it. I can own it.
Have either of you seen they had like kindergarten aged children asking Liam Gallagher questions? Have you seen this? It's like a Liam Gallagher interview, but the interviewers is like a classroom of like 5-year-olds, and it is absolutely.
This is exactly what my Instagram feed is full of. This and cat videos. As a middle-aged white woman, I'm all in.
Well, it's so good because he does not pull any punches. He answers the questions the same way he would if it was an adult, like cursing, calling his brother a prick, like all that stuff. Like he doesn't care that they're 5 years old at all. The only time he kind of curbed it a little was when he kind of told a kid it was a stupid question, but he didn't do it so directly to hurt the kid's feelings. But he basically said it was a stupid question in a kind of nice way for him. But you should look it up.
I hope he called him a prick, like with a really thick British accent.
He didn't, but I mean,
all the parents are Oasis fans, so they're all like, "Call my kid whatever you want."
You should everybody should look it up. It's a good time. It's very Liam Gallagher all the way.
All right, Poopsta, you're up.
All right, so my first song is there are 3.
I already got it. Don't even tell me. It's Haim.
It's Haim.
Yeah, for sure. I'm good. All right, cool. Go ahead. All right, what's the song?
The Wire.
Oh, it's so fucking good. What a cool video, too.
It's a great video. It's there's 100 reasons why I chose this song as the first song. I mean, I like, despite their nominations for all their awards and stuff, and a lot of the stuff that, like, I think they've gotten a lot of accolades over the past few years with their, appearance in movies, relationship with Paul Thomas Anderson, etc. But they just rock. Like they're
fucking great.
They're just so much fun. If you've not seen them live, go see Haim live. Just a blast to see. And, they've done a lot of recent collabs, I think, that are also really fun with Taylor Swift, with Florence and the Machine. Women in Music Part 3 is one of my favorite albums of recent years. But I started listening to them kind of a few years ago, and I can't think of a band recently that has been consistent with every album that they've released. So it took a minute for me to choose which song I wanted, but The Wire is just slaps. It's one of those songs that you can listen to. Particularly, I love listening to in the car with sunroof down, right? Great bass line. Super fun.
Great bass face.
Great bass face. Yes, totally.
She's got a great bass face. God, she's got a good bass face.
She's got one of the best bass faces of all time. For real.
Totally agree.
It's coming from a bass player here too. She's got a great bass face.
Yeah.
It's a great choice and they're just fantastic. There's not much else to say. Like, I agree. Women in Music is an incredible record, and I'm happy that they exist in the world. Like, I'm just happy that they exist and they put out amazing music, and they're just so cool and talented.
I didn't realize how fucking big they were. They're
massive,
one of those
dude.
ones that's massive behind the scenes.
And I feel like part of that is that they they have a lot of genres that they sort of play with a little bit in their music. So when I went to see them, I don't know, a couple of years ago here in Indianapolis, there were younger girls at the show, who are like, just learning to play guitar or whatever. There were folks my age in their 40s. And I think that part of it is just about their album of the year Grammy nomination was in the rock category, as it rightfully should be. And I think they still have a lot of really fun pop elements, a lot of great folk elements. Like, I just think that they're a fun band. Even if you don't know them super well, you probably know one of their songs and you're willing to sing along.
I love that they stay rock too. And that's nothing against pop music, because I absolutely love pop music, but it feels like a lot of artists start out rock, and then as they get popular, they move more into pop. And you can do both. You can be pop rock. It feels like a thing that was really prevalent in the 90s and early 2000s that's kind of gone away, but they definitely straddle that a bit. Like, their music is well written enough. They're pop songs. And so I can see them appealing to a pop audience, but they rock. Like, they're a rock band, and they're awesome.
It's really cool to look up their similar artists on Spotify. Two of their similar artists are Robin, which is just awesome dance music.
I love Robin, but that's not a similar artist in my mind, but I love Robin. I totally that's fantastic.
Agree. And then another one is fucking like Churches or Vampire Weekend, which are the similar artists are all over the fucking map, which is really cool to exactly what you said, Krista, where like they genre jump like nobody's business.
Right. And I think it's like one of the things that I think is really fun as well is that they're overt about how their influences come from sort of multiple genres. So if I'm going to mention another podcast here, but there's a great episode of Song Exploder where Danielle explains the kind of origin of Summer Girl, one of my favorite songs, not the one that I chose, like sort of choosing in between. And it's a great episode. But one of the things I love about it is that it talks about like their decision to use horns on their most recent album. And I think that is one of the things that makes them so genre bending, is that they're really willing to experiment with different instruments, with different sounds, whatever. So, you hear that saxophone in the back of Summer Girl, and it sounds like an 80s song. It's great. And I think that some of it is about just sort of exploring different genres, exploring different influences. Really fun.
Is that correct me if I'm wrong. I've listened to that Song Exploder. She also talks about like lyrically, that song was when her and her, I think now husband, first started kind of having a thing. Is that correct? And he had produced some of their music.
That they had a really, what's the right word? Like intense beginning of their relationship, because he was diagnosed with a serious illness kind of at the beginning of their relationship. And, this is one of the things I study, and I think it's really interesting to kind of think about, particularly for young people who are getting married later in life or partnering later in life than we have in previous generations, to think about like, how do younger couples work through these kinds of relationships they have? And like, to hear her and her now husband kind of walk through like, no, this is when we decided to be together. And one of the ways that we dealt with this really intense experience was to write music together. And I think it's really powerful and really cool.
It's adorbs.
The intro is basically like, it sounds just like Heartache Tonight from the Eagles. But the Eagles basically stole that from Gary Glitter, rock and roll. I kind of love that. It's like they totally did that intentionally, and it's a total like rock and roll historians like we listen to rock. Like this is like a total callback type thing. At least that's how I assume it is. I haven't read any interviews where they say that, but
No, I think that you've got it right, Roderick. I think that in a lot of ways, like one of the things that you hear in some of their interviews and some of the ways that they talk about their music, and I really appreciate that they're honest about this, is this question about, sort of homage or influence, about interpolation, and about just like outright, sort of copyright, like kind of stealing from people. And I think in a lot of ways, what's cool is that they're honest about all of the influences they have. They're honest about where they're borrowing other sounds. And to me, that's what makes music interesting, right? Is when you can say out loud, yeah, I heard this thing. I wanted to interpret it and reinterpret it. And here's how it got to this place.
And I love when people don't try to hide it and they just embrace their background.
Good job, Krista. Good pick. I got to get this one on the list as quick as I can.
I'm nervous.
Because I feel like this one could be stolen by either of you. So I'm going to say Rob Pope and Ryan
You
Pope.
son of a bitch. Like,
I had to get it out.
It's in my honorable mentions. I thought
son
you
of a
would pick
bitch.
it, and so I was like, I'm gonna pull back.
Well, I'll say it's the Get Up Kids. And I had this as my top choice, but the reason I didn't pick it first is I'll just let you talk. I'll let you talk, and then I'll justify Oasis first later. But what song?
The song is Holiday. I picked Holiday. What song did you have, Rod? Did you have Holiday?
No, in fact, I intentionally avoided that album.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Say more, Rod.
You talk
That's bold.
No, you talk first, Donnie, and then I'll speak my piece.
It hit me. I got a hold of this album at exactly the time that I needed to, when I was trying, like, I'm starting to genre shift in terms of the music I'm listening to. And this was a perfect soiree into good, I wouldn't call them power pop, but I guess I would call them emo. They're like an emo band. Yeah. And like everything off of Vagrant, Another Year on the Streets, every volume of that is my favorite imprinted music in what I still love to listen to, because this shaped everything I love moving forward.
Yeah.
And so this album, Something to Write Home About, is a desert island. The album will end. It will start again. And that fucking pick slide is like, yep, let's let it play. I'm not even.
It's so good.
Just let it play.
This is a very important band in my life, Donnie, and it's you spoke very well on it. I couldn't agree more. Like, this hit me just at the right time.
Yep.
This and Saves the Day became the soundtrack for the most part to my high school years. And I was still listening to alt rock and grunge, and I was still listening to more pop punk, but like, this really was like, I can listen to heavy, aggressive music that also has like a heart behind it, kind of stuff, which sounds really cheesy to say, but that's how I felt at the time. I will acknowledge that Something to Write Home About is their quintessential record. It is the Get Up Kids record. It is probably their best record. The reason I avoided this specifically for my pick is because, for two reasons. One, it's not actually my personal favorite record, believe it or not, even though I agree that it's probably their, whatever. It's their most.
What is your favorite?
On a Wire, I love. I absolutely love. Good. And two, the brothers, Ryan and Rob, are the rhythm section. So they're the drums and the bass. And that is featured. That is the heart of On a Wire. It is like Rob Pope's bass playing on that record it should be studied by bass players. It is so good.
I feel the same way about bass on Through Being Cool. I feel like the bass lines on Through Being Cool are the best bass lines I've ever heard in my life.
He was an amazing bass player too. He was an amazing bass player. I think he left after In Reverie. His bass lines on In Reverie kind of make that album too. I know we've talked about that record, but Rob, I'm pretty sure his bass playing on a Wire got him the job in Spoon. I think
that's 100% true. I was just going to say, a huge Spoon fan over here. Yes, absolutely. When I think about kind of what makes Spoon what it is his bass lines. And I don't think that there's many other people. When you think about sort of the evolution of Spoon as bad, there's nobody else who could have weathered that.
He's an incredible bass player, and you don't hear it on Something to Write Home About, and that's okay, because it's a more punk rock emo record, and it doesn't mean it's not good bass playing, because it is. It's great. It's what that album needed. But On a Wire, he showcases himself so well. I had All That I Know, which is a bit of an obscure song. It's a very Beatles-esque, like Sergeant Peppery.
Oh, it totally is. It totally is.
I was just going to say Sergeant Pepper, dude. You're so spot on.
Great job, Rod.
All we are is part of everything.
Spot on. It's like this very, like, again, kind of niche-y sort of, you know, if you're a fan, you know it, then you know that person is a fan if that's what they choose.
It's got the, like, James from Reggie and the Full Effect, his like, it's like an organ harpsichord sound, very Beatles, right? Like Rob's bass playing is just out of this world and the drumming is interesting. That's why I chose that. But I'm not trying to steal this from you, Donnie, because Holiday's a jam, and that record's a jam. I have tickets to see them play this album in its entirety in a couple months, and I am so excited.
And we talked about this, the Smoke and Popes.
Smoke Popes, yeah. And in fact, you didn't even know that there were brothers in Get Up Kids until last week's episode, until I brought it up on last week's episode.
Great job, Rod.
And then you stole it from me, you son of a bitch.
Thanks for the lob.
Well, good thing I have backups. Cross that one off. Whoosh.
Stoked to grab it. Roderick, you're up.
Well, now I'm really worried about other songs getting stolen.
Wait a minute, Donnie, were you sharpening a pencil?
Oh, no, I write everything down in mechanical pencil, and it has a twisting eraser that comes out.
Oh, so in mechanical pencil?
I don't like to work in absolutes. I like to be able to erase. So I don't like to use pens.
That doesn't sound like you. You're like such a black and white dude. You totally work in absolutes. I
don't like to write in absolutes because I am so finicky with my penmanship that if I don't ask Carlina Carboni about filling out bracket posters about how fucking pissed I am when she came in and screwed up my beautiful posters.
Future guest Carlina Carboni. We already have her episode. Yeah. It's just a matter of timing for her. But I agree. I took Myers-Briggs with you, dude. I know that you're a J, and I know
Krista
that you're
is a Myers-Briggs facilitator.
I love that about you. Krista. And your brother is the most ESTJ person I've ever met in my life. So,
and I am legit an INTJ, right? We are both like the story about my Myers-Briggs type is that I am the Emperor Palpatine of Myers-Briggs types.
I'm Darth Vader.
Yeah,
and I'm Luke Skywalker. So that's
Jesus
is that
Christ.
Why this works, Donnie? Is because I'm Luke
Maybe.
and you're Darth.
Let's say that's the case.
Okay,
I'm gonna cut that fucking hand off. Go ahead, it's your song pick, Rob.
Thanks. I'm gonna go back to the Haim thing. There's actually 3 siblings in this band.
Okay.
Brian, Dennis, and Carl.
Oh, I got it. Chris, you got it?
Oh, I don't know who it is. Brian, Dennis,
I'm going to guess it's the Beach Boys.
Sure is the Beach Boys.
Of course.
Damn,
Brian,
what the fuck, Krista?
Brian Dennis and Carl Wilson, the Beach Boys.
Oh, I feel like I'm a terrible Beach Boys fan. I will tell you that one of my quintessential music moment experiences is
the
in the early
Full House
2000s.
Episode. Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, it's
son of a bitch.
That too. But in the early 2000s, Brian Wilson did the Pet Sounds album in its entirety with symphonies around the country, like 20 years ago. I saw him play the whole Pet Sounds album with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Truly game-changing, mind-blowing. I mean, you hear the Pet Sounds album a million times, but to hear it with the orchestra, with him as weird and uncomfortable as he is in those spaces, this is gotta be on this episode. So glad you chose it.
Speaking of the Pet Sounds tour, Krista, this song is off Pet Sounds. I'm curious if you want to take a stab at what song I'm picking.
I mean, I would choose God Only Knows. I think it's
I would choose God Only Knows.
Well, that's good because I also chose God Only Knows.
God only knows where I'd be without you. If you should ever leave me.
Hell yeah, great job, Rod.
It's just such a good song. In so many ways, it's actually a way more interesting song than I think people give it credit for. Although Pet Sounds gets a ton of credit musically, as it should, but it's lyrically very interesting. It's like one of the few love songs that feels both like a kind of straightforward love song and yet kind of more realistic than other love songs, and also kind of like a love song from the perspective of somebody who's pretty depressed too, frankly. Like it's quasi self-loathing a little bit in this, like, I wouldn't be anything without you kind of a thing. Like, yeah, sure, life will go on, I guess, but like I'll be nothing kind of a thing. But it's also sweet in that way, and it's It's very Beach Boys sounding. It's just a really nice song. Couple figures for you here, just to prove that it's not just the three of us that love this song. Rolling Stone had it as the number 25 song of all time, just period, just the 25th best song ever. And Pitchfork had it as the number one song of the entire 1960s, which is wild when you think about what music was in the 60s.
I don't know. I kind of I'm all in on both of those. And I think the part of it, to your point, Rod, is the idea that there's a juxtaposition in this song between that super sweet harmony, right? Very Jackson 5 style kind of, multi-voice harmony.
Another brother band.
As you said, sort of this lyric that is on its face sweet, but if you think about it more deeply, a little bit weird, a little bit concerning. I think about the Police's Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic. There are songs in this genre that you're like, oh, I love that song as a love song when I was a kid. And now when I listen to it, that's a little cringy. There's kind of waves of appreciating songs like that, though, because when you hear them when you're young, you don't get the nuance, and then when you do first get the nuance of it, it all of a sudden it becomes maybe creepy or weird, and then you get even older, and you're like, well, now I appreciate all the complexity of this song. It's just a real human being singing about real emotion, and real emotion is complex and can be both a sweet love song, but also slightly concerning. That's the perfect word. If my friend wrote these lyrics, I'd be like, this is a fantastic song. And also, are you okay? I feel like you need to talk to somebody, honestly, I'm worried about you. But we've also kind of all been there, right? If you experience real heartbreak or significantly missing someone, you have that identity crisis of who am I without this person? It's an awesome song. That's totally true. And I also think Brian Wilson as an artist was able to capture a lot of that complexity of human emotion really before we saw other folks able to do it. I think about artists like Prince, for example, who is another one of my favorite artists who I think is able to capture some of this complexity that we see, and you kind of go down the genres, and some of what makes a song like this so great and what makes it stand the test of time is not only its sort of complex, lyrical complexity, but it's also its musical complexity. If you listen to this song a couple of times, you're going to hear something different every single time. And that's in part about just the incredible production quality of a song like this. Get out your headphones and listen to this song, because it's so much better than listening to it, in a couple of channels on your speakers at home.
I took a music theory class in college, and the professor had such a boner for the Beach Boys. I think we spent 8 classes talking about, number one, the Beach Boys' ability to harmonize, and number two, the Moog. I think there were literally 3 classes dedicated to the Moog, and I was like, all right, dude, let's move on. I get it.
It's a lovely song, and cool band started by some a little family band that turned into something way bigger.
I love that family band concept, though. That's amazing.
Dr. PCF, over to you.
All right. So speaking of family bands, my next band is Ruth, Anita, Bonnie, and June.
It's Anita Baker. Was she in the Supremes? Is it the Supremes?
It's not Anita Baker.
Oh.
Ruth, Anita, Bonnie, and June.
It is a band that you all know.
Is it...
Do you want me to give you a hint?
Yes, please.
I am so excited to bring you this song.
That's not really a hint. Oh,
that is a hint, dude.
I'm so excited.
I totally got it. Yeah, you got it, Rod. Good job.
And I just can't hide it.
But that's not the song.
Who is that? Who sings that song? Is that not the song? Or is it?
It's not the song. That's the band.
That's the band. And the band is the Pointer Sisters?
It's the Pointer Sisters.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to choose the Pointer Sisters, but I want to choose old Pointer Sisters. And I have a whole reason for this, right? I'm going to follow Rob's rules about you can't choose something obscure unless it relates to the theme. And I want to give the Pointer Sisters some credit here. So the song I'm going to choose is the Pointer Sisters' Fairy Tale.
Pretending that you care, but now
part of the reason why I chose Fairy Tale is that it was nominated for the Country Grammy of the Year in 1974.
Wow.
First all black woman group to be nominated for the Country Grammy of the Year in 1974. It's a great song. I know this song because it is I like listening to sort of old bands that, stuff I didn't know. I mean, obviously everybody knows Jump for My Love. Everybody knows I'm So Excited. This song, though, is a beautiful little country song, all written by Black women, during a time when Black people didn't make country music. But it's a really beautiful little song, worth a listen, especially given the amount of credit that Beyonce is getting right now. I think listening to this from the 70s is a really good example of when I think of bands who kind of paved the way to be genre bending, I think of a band like the Pointer Sisters.
I don't know what I was expecting, but it's exactly what I guess a Pointer Sisters country song would sound like. It sounds very 60s, 70s country, but with like Motown quality vocals. Like it sounds like R&B singers singing over country music. Like that's exactly what it's got, the whole slide. It's very like Dolly, that era country, but with the Pointer Sisters singing, which like they don't, I guess what I'm saying is they didn't twang their vocals out really. They just have their amazing Pointer Sister vocals going on.
And I think that that's one of the things that's so cool about the Pointer Sisters as a band is that they don't get credit in the spaces of other, I feel like, big family bands of a band that stood the test of time. They had 15 top 40 Hot 100 singles in the 80s. Like, so when you think about how huge they were, they moved from, working in country to working in dance music, to working in blues, to working in disco, soft rock, like through the genres. And I don't know how many other bands you can talk about in that same sentence.
Yeah, it says Fairy Tale reached number 13 on the pop charts too. That's not the country charts. That's the pop charts. Number 13. Wow.
You have no idea, Krista, how bad I was hoping that Mary Clayton was in the Pointer Sisters. Do you have any idea who Mary Clayton is?
I know exactly who Mary Clayton is. She's the woman from the movie with Ali Sheedy about the maid.
Yeah,
who
totally.
has like the moment where she sings.
Yeah, it's called Made to Order.
Oh, I couldn't remember the name. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Rod, do you and your, outside of Andre, do you and your sister have the worst movies that for some reason you guys are totally connected by as children?
Oh my God, Donnie and I have so many of those, Rod. If you don't have this experience, you need to just watch crappy movies with your sibling.
Well, we have a lot. Like we have a lot for sure. Like Matilda. Well, what do you mean shitty? Like some of these movies are fantastic. Andre is a fantastic movie. Andre, Free Willy, Matilda.
Made to Order was shitty.
All the Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen movies that she made me watch, which I will say are shitty because they absolutely are shitty pyramid scheme movies made for VHS to get little young girls to buy tapes. That's what they are. But I watched every single one of them. I could still probably sing you the songs from some of them.
Yeah, Brother for Sale. I'll throw it on Brothers for Sale right now. So for some reason, Krista and I were watching movies that we absolutely should have been watching as children. Not like
a lot with my friends.
Inappropriate
I think
movies.
that some of it was about early access to HBO.
Oh, yeah.
It was like I think Terry also, my partner Terry also had HBO kind of early on, and so like Donnie, do you remember watching Strange Brew as very young children?
I'd have to look up what that was. It's not jumping to the front of my head in the meantime.
Secret of My Success.
Oh, that was with Michael J. Fox and the really smoking hot blonde girl.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Strange Brew, like the Rick Moranis movie? Like the
That's
Canadian.
Exactly right. So what I think happened, I don't know that much about the history of cable. I need an assist on this. But I think that HBO got access to, let's say, 25 movies between 1985 and 1990. And they just replayed them over and over and over again. And so Donnie and I can recite the entire script of Baby Boom, the entire script of Look Who's Talking and Look Who's Talking Now.
Oh, those are great.
Well, there's 2, and then now is the dogs. 2 is
Look Who's Talking 2, and then Look Who's Talking Now.
I like
now is the dogs.
though.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, dude, there was this weird thing where it was like these not inappropriate movies, but just very mature themes, like not inappropriate in any way, but like Baby Boom to go back and Parenthood, like just laughing at Parenthood. Have you ever seen the movie Parenthood?
I don't
Steve
know.
Martin, Rick Moranis, like
directed by I believe directed by one of the Glazer brothers. I mean, Parenthood was a wildly popular movie in the theater.
Huge.
People loved it.
My sister would if I'm putting myself in my sister's shoes, she would probably say I made her watch all the Monty Python shit because my dad got me into it.
Okay.
And I was definitely too young to understand half the shit they were talking about in those movies.
For sure.
But and I
Blazing
for
Saddles.
sure made my sister watch those because I watched them obsessively. Monty Python, Mel Brooks, Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, High Anxiety. I was obsessed with Mel Brooks too. Probably made her watch all that stuff, which would have been probably over my head, which means it was way over her head.
Yeah, Roderick, you need to know that the level of quality that you're talking about there is like eons above the level of quality.
That's my dad to me, and then me forcing my sister to watch it. I also had to watch everything my sister wanted to watch, which is where the Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen movies come in, which is where the Andres and the Free Willies come in, Ladybugs, which is
great movie.
Inappropriate,
great movie.
Fantastic.
All right, I'm up. I got the damn thing right here. So our brothers in this group are going to be, and this one's going to be obscure. I don't think you guys have a chance. Justin Hawkins and Dan Hawkins.
The Darkness.
Good old Justin. Oh, holy shit, Rod. Wow, great job. And I just hit the nail on the head with I Believe in a Thing Called Love. And the reason I love this song so much is because this album came out in 2000, and it was so reminiscent of old 80s hair metal. And if you like, I don't know a band that does such a good job of being fun and awesome and also taking themselves pretty seriously. Like, they take themselves serious at being fun and awesome, which is what I love about this. The fact that their second album is called A One-Way Ticket to Hell and Back is the best hysterical album title I've ever fucking heard.
I think that you're absolutely right about it. It's like this perfect mix of like a little tongue in cheek, but also we're doubling down on this.
Yeah.
We're in it. Yeah. That's a great choice, Donnie.
Like, his falsetto is great. Like, he's a hell of a singer. Like, he's a really good singer. You know, like, I love this band. I love, like, their music videos are super funny, but also it's fucking good music. So again, The Darkness, I Believe in a Thing Called Love. Rod, I am blown the fuck away that you got that one. Incredible job.
Me too, Rod. Good job. Yeah, I wouldn't have gotten that one.
I agree. Like, that song's a good song. I've heard some other stuff from them, and it sounds they do that like glam rock, glam metal thing. It's not like pastiche. It's like genuine. They're like just a band out of time almost.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. I feel like they're having the most fun. I feel like if there's a band like within when we talked about the dynamics of bad brothers in bands, I feel like maybe The Darkness figured it out and they're having the most fun.
I completely agree with you. That's one of the things I always think about with their live performances. I'm always like, these dudes have a very high level of job satisfaction.
Yeah.
They seem to really like their jobs.
I mean, that the music video of the song is just so good. It's just so cheesy, but good. I mean, you said it well. It's like it's fun and silly, but it's very serious about being fun and silly.
Right.
Like, they do it at a high level, high quality.
If any of the listeners have, like, again, I picked this song because it's the most on the nose. It's the easiest one to like intro you to The Darkness. Again, their second album, One Way Ticket to Hell and Back, is a far better album. And it is so fucking good.
This came at a time, though, where like there were other bands doing. So everybody gives Greta Van Fleet shit, which fair enough. It's so on the nose, Led Zeppelin. But this was like Jet and Wolfmother and The Darkness. And those bands don't sound alike, but they all have that we were a band out of time. Like Wolf Mother would have been big in the 70s, straight up. Jet would have been big in the late 70s, early 80s, straight up. Like The Darkness would have been a big glam rock band. They just existed in the wrong time. Now, you would also argue that maybe they wouldn't be playing that music if all that shit hadn't happened first, and they probably grew up with it. But I guess what I mean is they're doing it earnestly and well. And that was a thing at that time. Like what, early 2000s? Is that when this came out?
I thought initially it was 2000 was when Permission Land came out, but it was actually 2003. And it's just such a fucking great album. And then One Way Ticket to Hell and Back came out in 2005. And they've put out 6 albums since. Their last album came out in 2021, which I had no idea. So I'm excited to maybe mosey on behalf of Cody and go listen to some new Darkness albums.
Wikipedia is telling me that they opened for Disturbed in 2002.
That's
Bummer. Bummer.
And people threw bottles at them.
Oh, bummer.
Poor guys.
All right, Roderick, you're up. What do you got next to follow up the Darkness?
Here it's brothers.
Okay.
Again.
Believe it or
not,
not,
here are their
siblings.
names. Yeah, believe it or not, they're brothers. Johnny and Colin Greenwood.
I got nothing.
You don't know, Donnie?
Johnny Greenwood. There are people screaming at you right now, Donnie.
I'm sure they are. All right, give it to me.
Krista, do you know?
I mean, like, from my standpoint, I would say that it's Radiohead, but now I'm afraid that I'm wrong.
It is. It is Radiohead.
Right. I forgot how big Rod's boner was for Radiohead. All right, that's right. My bad. I'm not the biggest Radiohead.
Supposed to mean?
What's wrong with you? How did it happen?
They're a great band. This isn't like a Roderick thing. This is a world thing. And and they're siblings. So what do you want from me here?
I for whatever reason, this was one that just they're one of the bands that I never got into.
Well, you know what? It's a good thing it's a mixtape among 3 people, and that you don't get to pick all 12 songs then.
Yeah, no shit. All right.
I get to pick a Radiohead song, and I'm going with Jigsaw Falling Into Place.
Between the notes, the beat goes round and round. The beat goes round and round.
Oh, nice choice.
Yeah. So in Rainbows, I feel like I'm going to keep talking about the bass apparently on this episode, but Colin is the bass player, and I think this highlights the bass playing probably better than any other album. Everybody knows what Johnny brings to the band, which is like almost everything. Like, I mean, not taking anything from Tom, but he's a guitar player, synth player, weird random instruments that they invent player. So he's kind of key to everything Radiohead's done. And I'm not saying Colin isn't, but In Rainbows has some killer bass lines, and this song is just so good. This album's great, but I really think the song features both of them really well. So Donnie, I didn't know you weren't a Radiohead fan. I'm a little disappointed.
I think he's not a Radiohead fan. I just wouldn't call him I wouldn't say that they were at the top of your list, particularly in the early 2000s, Donnie.
No, I'll straight up tell you, I'm not a fucking Radiohead fan. That was a bus that just went right past the stop. I've heard a ton of Radiohead. I've listened to a bunch of Radiohead. I know, Poopsta, you're a big Radiohead fan.
Huge Radiohead fan, absolutely.
Yep.
I'm going to do that thing that all fans of bands do when they hear another human being's not a fan of their band and be like, well, have you heard this? But I'm still going to say it. Have you listened to In Rainbows? Because I do feel like it's kind of a little more straightforward indie rock, as much as Radiohead can do that anymore.
I've never put on a Radiohead album. And again, I understand their
influence, right?
Influence. I understand their segment in music, but they're just one of those bands that I guess I'd rather put something a little happier on, maybe, I feel like Radiohead it carries a ton of weight.
It does. And it's not happy. It's not happy music necessarily.
When we start to talk about seasonal music, if I want to really take a soiree into seasonal depression, I'm probably going to put Radiohead on.
Yeah, you say that you don't listen to anything that's sad or angry. You know what I mean?
No,
don't get me wrong.
You're totally right.
Everything's subjective, and you don't have to like them. There's probably some great music that I just don't like because it just doesn't suit me personally. But let's not pretend you haven't put songs on playlists that. Fear of the Dark is not a happy song, dude.
But it's a great fucking song.
And so is this. So yeah. I will say, I don't think I have to defend Radiohead much. And there's so much media out there about Radiohead and I'm not an expert, so I don't want to get too into what makes Radiohead great or what makes this song great. But maybe people didn't realize that there were brothers in this band. And so maybe that's what this podcast can bring to the Radiohead world is Colin and Johnny are brothers. I was, in researching for this episode, there's a kind of a vibe out there that Radiohead probably won't put out any music anymore, because that doesn't mean they won't play some shows, but they've kind of moved on to other things. And Johnny and Tom are in the Smile now, which basically sounds like late Radiohead anyway.
A desire, second chance, I have set myself on fire.
I got to see them recently and they're incredible. And they do kind of just sound like In Rainbow's era Radiohead, honestly. And it's great, but it's...
I was going to say, I'm not mad at that. Yeah. I would listen to a lot of that era of Radiohead. I think that one of the things that's hard about thinking about Radiohead's relevance, I mean, to some extent is the way that people feel. And I know y'all are going to get hate mail about this, but is about Pearl Jam's relevance. It is hard to be relevant for 3 decades. It's hard. Mm-hmm. And thinking about what bands do that really well, I think some of it is about doubling down on the genre, connecting to the nostalgia of their music. Pearl Jam certainly is in that camp. And, when I think about kind of bands who have been consistent for that, 30 years, which sounds crazy to me to say 30 years, but, one of the things that Radiohead did in order to stay relevant was kind of reinvent itself 2 or 3 times. And I think that you only get so many reinventions.
Has there been a band, and I guess this is more for you, Krista, because Donnie doesn't care about this band, but I would be curious if Donnie has an opinion on this. Is there a band that you can think of ever who were able to be as popular as Radiohead were while being like avant-garde / artsy / experimental at the level that they were over and over again and still be a massive band?
So the first person, I have 2 artists that come to mind. I've actually mentioned them, I think, already tonight. And that is somebody like David Bowie.
Okay. Yeah.
Decade to decade.
Yep.
And Prince. Yeah. When you said Prince earlier, that was, I was like, oh shit. Yeah. Prince.
Decade to decade. Right. And I mean, I think that again, what that's about is how do you, as a group of individuals, relearn what is relevant, what is popular, what is interesting, still keep your voice, still keep kind of that artistic sense of who you are in a new era.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I think Radiohead just deserves some respect for that, doing that as a band as well, though, because I love Prince. Prince is incredible. Prince is an individual who drives his own music, and same with David Bowie. And Radiohead were able to do that as a collective of individuals and still push that and stay together. It
100%.
feels even more.
Obviously, bringing in the Beach Boys earlier, right?
Yeah.
Who, some people would say they sort of attempted to recycle or reinterpolate their same sound when it came to surf rock.
Yeah.
But I think you're right to say, again, putting the doctor hat on, as somebody who studies collaboration, what makes collaboration work, it's really hard to collaborate and evolve at the same time.
Oh, that's big.
I suppose the answer to the question I asked that people are probably screaming at their devices right now is the Beatles, though. I guess the Beatles definitely reinvented themselves album to album very quickly, I
think that's true. And I think that some of that is about and maybe we could talk about Johnny Greenwood as an individual artist, right? That to some extent it might be about the artists in the group that are able to make this work. I think that even in the field of marriage counseling or the, kind of the field of interpersonal communication, they talk about how do you evolve in parallel. And evolving in parallel is a really hard thing to do. As illustrated by some of the other bands that I'm going to bring up are bands that have been, that were great when the siblings were together and then also great apart. And I think that that's some of what you're talking about, Ron.
Yeah. I have ulterior motives. I just want Donnie to feel like he's missing out on some real art, not just great music, but real art here. Yeah. Donnie.
No, Donnie, I think that you're kind of spot on this. All of us have bands like this that were like, appreciate you existed.
Yep.
Right. I understand what your influence was like. Again, this is a very unpopular opinion among my my friends and colleagues of my similar, birth years. But I feel this way about Blondie. Appreciate that Blondie existed. Understand why Blondie is amazing. Not really my jam.
Interesting. I love Blondie, but I feel like I haven't appreciated her fully until more recently. But I kind of get where you're coming from on it. Yeah, it's all subjective. It's all, and a lot of times it's where your state of mind was or where you were in your life when you first learned about bands. And I think people can get a little extra oomph into a band or blocked off from a band based on some of those things. So,
all right, Dr. PCF, you're up.
All right, my next siblings.
Turns out they're related
in this. What'd you say?
They're related.
It's funny every time you say it, Donnie. Funny every time you say it.
It's like when me first says the next one's a cover.
Yeah, exactly.
So funny. Okay, so the siblings are Vicky and Debbie, but the other two members are Susanna and Michael, a girl named Michael.
I can't not think of Debbie Harry because you just said Blondie, but there's no siblings. That's not a
Give me
sibling.
Give me the first two again.
A little bit later than that, but not too much.
Give me the first two again.
So the sisters are Vicky and Debbie.
Is it the fucking Bangles?
But then the other two members, the one that Donnie you would remember, is Susanna.
Is it the Bangles?
And then the Bangles.
Fuck yeah! Ooh.
I'm going to choose the Bangles. Manic Monday.
Just another manic Monday. Wish it was Sunday. That's my fun day.
God, I'm so stoked that I got the Bangles, and I'm stoked that you chose Manic Monday, but not as good of a song. I have to think about the one that I wanted to hear. But
I love that there's 80s representation on here. I feel like that's a decade that's been sorely lacking in our mixtapes, Donnie, except for your Iron Maiden.
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of felt that way. I mean, I have listened along the way and have felt like part of my job was like, to bring my eras here to this space. And I chose Manic Monday for a very particular reason, because I wanted to be able to talk a little bit about the person who wrote Manic Monday, who is, do we know?
No. David Bowie.
Prince.
Okay.
Prince. You're so close.
So close.
No shit. Prince wrote Manic Monday.
So Prince wrote Manic Monday. I will always talk about Prince whenever I get the opportunity. I realize, again, it's very of my era, very middle-aged white lady to want to talk about Prince. But I part of the reason why I love this song and I love the band The Bangles, Donnie, I will tell you that there were I had 3 different Bangles songs on this list, and I was like, I want to do In Your Room because I think In Your Room has like a really fun kind of Pet Sounds feel to the harmonies in it. I love their cover of Hazy Shade of Winter, great Simon and Garfunkel song. They do really interesting things. Outstanding bass playing on their cover of Hazy Shade of Winter. Of course, everybody loves Walk Like an Egyptian.
Do they?
But in the end, Manic Monday won out for a bunch of different reasons. One of them is that it was just an incredibly popular song at the time. I don't know about y'all, but you couldn't get around hearing this song when it came out. They, were one of the bands in the 80s, along with the Go-Go's, that were all girls who changed what we thought about what women in rock could do. And God, it was a great couple of albums for them. And Vicky Peterson, Debbie Peterson were the sisters that were in the band. Susanna Hoff sang on most of the songs. And then they had their Michael Steele, who played bass for most of their albums. And I love this song. I will still sing along hard when it comes on the radio. It's just a blast to listen to. And I think it's a really good also interpretation of a Prince song. And it shows you just what an amazing writer Prince was, right? Because he could write a pop song like nobody's business.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy that you bring this up because so first and foremost, number one, over 5 million monthly listeners still, which is absolutely fucking insane to me. Like that they're still averaging close to 6 million monthly listeners on Spotify. But as I look at their related artists, Rod, if you want to know who my sister was from fucking 1989 to 1992, it is the Bengals. It is fucking Debbie Gibson. It is Tiffany. It is Bananarama. Dude, I have such vivid memories of Krista wearing stupid hats and fucking rocking out to these bands in the late 80s, early 90s. And I have such a giant appreciation for this. Like,
Belinda Carlisle, Wilson Phillips.
Totally. Yeah. Like you were heavy into this genre and it was super like female forward of what they were doing. And it was fucking awesome. And like at the time, if I listened to any more Debbie Gibson, I probably would have punched a hole in the wall. But like to look back at it, it's like, I totally get it.
It's interesting that we've kind of sidestepped the 80s to this point so far. And I guess in our defense we haven't even hit our 10th episode yet, but yeah. I'm sure there's definitely an age bias there for sure, but it's not like I don't like 80s music. I love 80s music, especially pop music. Like pop music in the 80s was incredible. I mean, an 80s one hit wonder episode is daunting to me because there were so many of them. And that's not the Bengals, as you illustrated. They had multiple hits. But I love 80s music. I love this kind of stuff. And as you pointed out, there were quite a few female-fronted or all-women groups in the 80s that were huge. I mean, you've brought up two already, you and Blondie, even though you're not a fan of Blondie. But Blondie and, you know, the Go-Go's, the Bangles, the Runaways pop in my head, you know.
Bananarama.
Oh, I think the Runaways, like an outstanding band to mention at this time. And I think that one of the things, I guess, for me, like, you know, kind of moving back toward Fleetwood Mac, you know, moving back toward also, again, a lot of Black artists, Black all-girl groups that were influencing the kind of harmonies that you saw a band like the Bangles able to do. And I think that, you know, for me, part of it is like interesting to think about the idea that, you know, girl groups or girl music, you know, is a genre in every decade. It just sounds a little bit different each time.
Yeah. And
kind of thinking about what a band like the Bangles, who are really great musicians. And again, I'll go back to their cover of Hazy Shade of Winter because it's a beautiful cover. It's really well done. And first of all, it's hard, you know, like I was going to say it's, you know, hard for a group like the Bangles to make a Simon and Garfunkel song sound bad, right? It's a group of great singers. It's a group of great musicians. It's a great song. But I remember hearing that song when I was, you know, to Donnie's point, 12, 13 years old, and thinking, I didn't know that girls could rock like this. And I think that that's really important for young people to like get that sense of like, there are options for what the music you can listen to sounds like. And that was really powerful at the time.
I don't know if it's just me because I've always loved a woman fronting a rock band, whether it's all women or a woman front. Like I've always loved it. And I don't know, really, I've never understood the machismo thing behind dudes who don't like women singing in rock bands because I absolutely think it sounds incredible. But there's that's kind of the thing right now too. Like a lot of the new stuff I'm listening to recently, like recent music, and I don't know where it happened, but the last couple of years I've spent a lot more time trying to discover new artists, but they all seem to be women fronting heavy rock bands. Like I think I brought up Gouge Away on an episode recently, Donnie. Like that's a great one. Like Mannequin Pussy just put out a new album, and it's absolutely incredible.
Totally outstanding. Mm-hmm.
And they just fucking rock. And it's a mixture of like indie rock and hardcore and everything all together all at once. And they're unapologetic and they're awesome. So it does kind of seem to go in waves. And maybe I'm just in that moment right now, but it feels like there's a lot of amazing rock coming out now centered around women.
Well, and I think, I mean, the question, of course, is like, you know, how long has this been going on? You know, like what are the spaces where women have access to these conversations? I think about bands like the Linda Lindas, who I love, who have gotten such great press lately. I think that some of it is about folks having open conversations about the experiences of women in music that might sound different than some of the experiences that men have had. And my last song, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, also has a lot of those artists that sort of, kind of dip their toe in the water of asking this question of like, what is it that young men have access to in terms of their feelings, in terms of their relationships with others, that get them to a place where they can, ask these hard questions and produce this amazing music. Women obviously have access to those spaces too, as do gender nonconforming folks. And why are we not in a place when we're able to tell those stories? And I think that that's one of the things that's cool about podcasts like this and other podcasts, is that you get an opportunity to sort of see the evolution of these stories. And to me, that's what makes music interesting still, that I still want to discover a new band, 30 years into listening to music.
Well, this song's also just an earworm, and it's going to be stuck in my head now after recording this, because it's just playing in my head right now. So
it's crazy.
Okay.
And again, like we're talking at length about a lot of things, but what's crazy is that if I think of Krista's musical influences or Krista's musical journey, it was always very female forward. Like a lot of what you listen to, like if I think back, like I can go through Krista's pop forward women led groups like the Bangles, the Go-Go's, Belinda Carlisle, shit like that. And then if we fast forward a little bit, I can think of your kind of Riot Girl phase, fucking L7
Bikini
and
Kill,
listening to like, yeah, totally.
Tigra
like,
and stuff.
For sure. And then I can think of Krista's Lilith Fair phase of like, all like the amazing like singer-songwriters from like Lilith's Fair and like all of that shit. So like, it's interesting. I've never really looked at your music stylings or your music preferences through that lens, Krista. So that's kind of crazy to think about.
Well, and I think, like I said, I'm going to go back to the idea that like, like we're lucky in that we had like two parents that, that loved us and cared about us. And also that we had space to explore who we were as young people. And I think about kind of my experiences of, trying new music out and in thinking about women's experiences in rock. And in a lot of ways, part of what I was looking for and what I think I'm still looking for is like stories that reflect my story, right? And I think that's what we always look for in music is like, what are the stories that people are telling either through, audio elements, through sonic elements, or through lyrical elements that represent a story that's uniquely who you are, what your experiences are. And a lot of my experiences, in part because of the field that I went into, because of what I study, those experiences have been gendered in some way. And that's not to say like it's the only lens that I use to see the world. I use lots of lenses to see the world. But when it comes to music, these kinds of amazing women tell stories that resonate with me. And I think it's really fun.
Nice. Oh, where do I want to go? Where do I want to go? Where do I want to go? All right. I'm going to do this one because, again, we're going to talk about sister influences. So we're going to say Dean DeLeo and Robert DeLeo.
I don't have a guess.
Dean and Robert DeLeo.
Dean and Robert.
Neither of which are a very captivating frontman of this band. And that would FTP, that frontman would be Scott Weiland. And
Scott Weiland, who drove past me very high in a golf cart at the World Music Theater in like 1993.
Yeah. There's a couple of channels that I collected Stone Temple Pilots into the music, and one of them was Krista. Big STP fan. I wasn't there for the Scott Weiland experience when he drove past Krista very high, but again, we've talked about it.
Am I guessing a song?
Oh no, I'll say my song. Okay, my song
Can I guess?
is go for it.
I'm trying to think if you go like straight up the middle on this.
Yeah,
or
it's gonna. I'll tell you this. It's pretty on the nose.
Interstate Love Song?
No, it's a little
Plush.
less on the nose. It's Big Empty.
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I think they did.
That's not hugely on the nose. In
You
fact,
don't think so?
I'm looking at their Spotify right now. That's not even in their top 5. So
No shit.
I mean, it was a single.
Okay. Yeah. We've talked time and time again about the collection of music and how we got the most music we could. And again, it's all movie soundtracks, right? And so The Crow was just such a fucking good movie soundtrack. And this was the song that was on the Crow soundtrack. And
dude, okay, I'm gonna go deep into this. One of the things that is so great about Big Empty is the lyrics of this album are hard in Scott's substance use disorder. They are hard in his like space of trying to figure out who he was. I will be honest, Donnie, that when you were like, I chose an STP song, I was like, Big Empty is the song. Like, too much walking shoes worn thin, too much tripping and my soul's worn thin. It is still to this day one of my favorite lyrics.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of a deep double entendre, right? Like it's a deep double meaning of how spending too much time in this space that you know is not great for you can affect the way that you think about everything that comes after. And super glad that you chose this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, I don't want to be naive in the sense that I can't really relate to the lyrics. But when I think about it from, again, influential at that time, the movie The Crow, and we can spend half of the podcast just making fun of Travis Williams if you want for the Crow kid that he was, or we can just talk about the Crow kids in high school, you know, and like, I mean, right now, you know, we can say who all the Crow kids were. But again, in terms of collection of music, it was soundtracks. And then again, I may have either stole this album from you, Krista, or stole the Crow soundtrack from you. And I just remember listening to this and like that part when the chorus comes in is so fucking good. Like that really is a perfect musical moment in my mind where like when the chorus of this song kicks in, it's like that is perfect production. That's a perfect moment in a song for that song to come in. Again, I haven't listened to Stone Temple Pilots a lot later in life. I mean, again, I'll throw them on from time to time, but in this time, this was such a fucking big deal.
This song was the jam. The like behind the music was the jam. Like, sure. This is things I am sure that you can go find this episode of Behind the Music on YouTube or some clips of it on YouTube. Yeah. Right. Cause it was just of the time. Scott Weiland was I hate to call a human a character, right? But he was at the time somebody who like was facing so many challenges, and you sort of watch the news to kind of see what happens. To your point, Donnie, about Crow Kids, I think that, you know, his aesthetic, right? Sometimes an androgynous aesthetic kind of informed the way that young people thought about music at the time. But I will say I have a very particular memory of driving mom and dad's like white GMC Jimmy with the sunroof down, because it was the only car that we owned that had a sunroof. And listening to this song like loud enough that when I saw cops, I would turn it down. Right? Because it just is a banger. It's a song that you can sing along to, that if you know the words, it's just, like you said, so well produced. Yeah, I could nerd out.
It's interesting, Donnie, because that you said about you haven't listened to them in a while. Like I listened to them a lot at that time. I mean, I was 9 when Core came out, but I got into it later when like the other stuff was coming out and I was actually listening to it. But like those first 4 records of theirs, every single one of them was awesome. I don't know if everybody agrees about number 4, but I would include it in their great records, which that's the one that I remember getting when it came out and had like Sour Girl on it and stuff like that. But those first 4 records were awesome. I do feel like I listened to them later and felt like it didn't age well. And then I have actually listened to them a few times recently because 60 Songs brought it up. And then Jason brought up the STP on that one episode we did. And I kind of went back and listened to them, and it did this weird arc where it's like, I feel like it didn't age well. And now it kind of has again. And this is just subjective. This is my opinion. But now when I listen to it, I'm like, actually, this is very of the time in a good way. Like it brings me back to what alt rock radio was in the late 90s.
Oh my God, dude.
It doesn't really like, there was a while where I felt like it sounded a little cheesy, and it's not sounding cheesy to me anymore. And like Core and Purple had so many great songs.
Yeah. I hope your next pick is really happy.
Well, that's the thing is like, I'm debating now. So I've got 3 kind of honorable mentions here that I got to pick one from since you took Get Up Kids. And like one of them is way more fun, but is 90s. And I feel like we already have too much 90s representation on here.
All right. Take us on the journey. I
don't know.
Rob.
This song is not fun, but it's not heavy either. So I'm going to go.
Give us the siblings. Whoa, give us the siblings.
I can't give you the last name because it'll give it away completely. So it's Tom and John, which doesn't tell you anything because those are the 2 of the most generic men's names ever. I'll give you the last name.
All right, give us the last name.
Fogerty.
Okay, that helps.
Great job.
Does it give you a hint about who we might be talking about? Yeah. So
for sure.
Creedence Clearwater Revival, CCR, Tom and
What
John,
song?
siblings. What song do you think? A lot of choices.
I don't think that you.
You know me so well now, Donnie, as we realize, you stated earlier, you just get me now. So I will tell you this too. If you caught me from the age of like probably 6 to 14, there's probably 8 years of my life where I would have said this was my favorite song.
And it's, I'm going to say.
Wait. Okay, wait. Say that again. Hold on. This is like a math problem.
Yeah.
This is fun.
Well, obviously I wasn't around when this came out, but from when I was about 6 to about when I was a preteen or early teen, I probably would have said this was my favorite song. And I don't really have an explanation as to why. I just always absolutely loved this song.
I'm going to say Bad Mood Rising.
I was going to say Fortunate Son.
So Fortunate Son's a great guess. That probably would have been later me, but Donnie nailed it. It's fucking Bad Moon Rising.
Nice. Let's see that. I don't have enough context.
We're so cute at this point, Rod.
Super cute.
Yeah, it's adorable. It is Bad Moon Rising, and I think it's a pretty basic kind of like rhythm and blues rock and roll song with a little like it's like I wouldn't call it edge, but to like a young person that probably had enough creepiness in it where it felt edgy, right? It's like a bad moon, ooh, it's spooky or whatever. But it is a jam, and Green River's a great album. And tell me, I'm curious your two's perspective because I came up in such a heavy classic rock household. This is a band that felt like they've lost importance over time, and I don't quite understand why, because they were and are incredible. But they feel like when I was growing up learning about and listening to classic rock, they would have been considered one of like the big American rock bands. And I don't feel like they're probably considered that anymore.
Well, the 35 million monthly listeners might say otherwise.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
There you go.
And it's crazy because I'm trying to think of what has a bigger footprint right now. Is it Creedence or is it Fogerty's solo shit? And what footprint is bigger? Like
it's got to be CCR, right? Though still?
I would think so. But like when you say that they don't seem as relevant, I don't know if it's because John Fogerty's solo stuff has
he only has 1.5 million monthly listeners.
Yeah,
so there's some scale there.
So I mean,
so I love that he's singing about playing center field and all, but that doesn't quite hit the way Fortunate Son does
on a baseball bat guitar.
Yeah, it doesn't quite hit the same. This was a big deal. This band was a big deal to me growing up.
The same. I'm sorry, that was the daddest joke.
Oh shit, Rod! And did you do it on purpose?
I did, and that was a Donnie joke. If I've ever told one,
that's fucking
but
great.
Rod, I do think that you have a point about what is it about the experiences that folks hear in Creedence songs that are about wartime, that are about sort of like a change of generations. I don't do as much generational research anymore, but I used to do quite a bit of research focused on generations that looked at sort of even the simple size of generations, right? The idea that like the baby boomer generation was huge in comparison to the generations that followed it. And some of it was just about like having access to wealth. So people felt like they could have more children, right? So when you think about CCR and bands like it at the time, part of it is about questioning like, now that we have access to resources, what are we going to do with that?
Yeah. And that I would imagine that population is now on Spotify and listening to this because not only do they have 35 million monthly listeners, Donnie, but Spotify's telling me they're the 113th most played artist in the world right now. So like they're still in the top 150 artists in the world.
That's fucking nuts.
So forget what I said about them losing any kind of like, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. These numbers say differently, but I wonder how much of that is baby boomers, listening to that, to your point, Krista. I will also just give a quick anecdote about why I didn't want to hint at it, but because it would have given away Bad Moon Rising, but there was you guys will appreciate this. My dad used to tape everything off of TV that he thought he would ever want to watch again, right? Like on VHS tapes.
Yeah.
But what that led to, and my dad also went hard at Halloween. Like growing up, Halloween was like a big deal. And he recorded so many Halloween specials and movies from the 80s and 90s. I still have them to this day. He gave me the VHS tapes. I have them. I don't have a VCR, so I can't watch them, but I have the tapes still.
There are Reddit communities that would come after you for these tapes. These are sought after.
I love them. And if one day I will convert them or something. But one of the specials that I would watch every year was a DTV, not MTV, DTV, which is Disney TV's, like would make these shows that were like music based. And they had a DTV Halloween special, which was like Halloween-y songs with like, you know, cartoon edits over them, right? And so Bad Moon Rising was one of those songs, of course, because it's got that quasi, like kind of October-y fall spooky thing going on, right? Mm-hmm. So it was like, I'll Put a Spell on You, Bad Moon Rising, fucking Rockwell. What's the Rockwell Michael Jackson song? Somebody's watching me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like that. And I loved all those songs because I loved Halloween because my dad made it so fun and he recorded that. And so there you go. That's why this song is my CCR song.
I love it. Great choice, Rod.
Appreciate it.
Dr. PCF, it's your last one. It's your last contribution.
Oh my God, this is so hard. I feel like I have rarely felt this level of pressure.
It's what we do. We put the pressure on.
It's true with this last song in particular, because, you know, as we've talked about, you know, we have a sort of generational problem that we over cover the 90s, right? And part of it is about sort of our, like, you know, time at that time, you're discovering music, etc. So I had a 90s song, but I might make a game time decision.
Save it for an honorable mention. Throw the new one out. Although you did a great job with Hain, but keep going.
All right. My new one is not that new. My new one is a 2017 song, Three Sisters, Natalie, Allison, and Megan Closner.
Megan.
Mm-hmm.
That's not ringing a bell at all.
2017, Natalie, Allison. I'm trying to think of.
I'm not going to lie. I just looked this up because that doesn't ring a bell.
You
so I'm out
cheater.
of guessing. I've never heard of this band.
You fucking cheater.
So you know what it is now.
Oh, I do, but I've never heard of this band, honestly. So this is new to me. Krista. I'm discovering new music.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is a band of young women. The band is called Joseph, and this is probably a song that you have heard. It came out in 2017. It's a song called White Flag. And I'll tell you a little story about this song. One of my colleagues went to the Women's March in 2017 in DC. She and her daughter went, and on the way there, they listened to this song by the band Joseph, and the song is White Flag. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with the band Joseph, like many of my previous choices, great harmonies, a little bit of folk sort of inspiration. This song is a little bit of an anthem. And I didn't feel like I had one of those kind of up until now. You know, I've got my few songs that I can choose. Like I said, my honorable mentions are kind of also anthems. But this one in particular for me feels interesting and powerful in 2017 when the song comes out, because like we get to talk about 2017 like it's kind of recent history at this point. And given the political climate, I think that it is important to think about what does it mean for young women to say, I'm not going to, you know, wave the white flag, which is what the sort of focus of this song is. The band Joseph rocks. They're outstanding guitar players. Encourage you to listen. And part of what they talk about is kind of their experiences about family, their experiences about wanting something and not being able to get to it. And I think that this song in particular, the kids are all right. And that this song sort of illustrates that.
It's giving me some Brandi Carlile vibes. Is that, am I off on that, or is that fair?
I think that that's right. I think that when they toured with Brandi Carlile a few years ago, along with Amos Lee, so they have again that kind of folk rock sort of bit to it. But they're a great young band, and again, I'm going to go back to like as the middle-aged white lady in the room. There are moments when I look at what young people are producing and I think like, how do we get to that place of creativity that we were in before? How do we get to that place where we don't have, sort of outside influences shaping, outside influences that are sometimes not about people's voices, but are more about like commercialism, shaping the way we think about music. And I feel like Joseph is a band that tries to live outside of that.
They just look like badasses on this photo.
When I clicked on this, I was like, holy shit, is this the same person with 3 different wigs on? But 2 of them are twins, and then the third one is another sister. But damn, they all look identical.
That's
holy
so
shit.
interesting.
They do, don't they? There's a very strong DNA.
Holy shit, they look exactly the same.
That's interesting too, because I brought up Brandi Carlile. Her bass player and guitar player live are two twins.
Correct. Absolutely. One of my honorable mentions includes the Twins. And for those of you that are, listening in real time, the Twins have a new album coming out, I think, in a couple of months. Like just the Twins. No,
it's not your fucking turn yet. It's not your fucking turn yet.
I didn't know that. I'll be honest, Krista, I didn't know they put out music separately. But I mean, I'm stoked.
This is brand new for them. So they have been on a couple of other like session musicians on a couple of other albums. But I saw like truly a couple of weeks ago as I was prepping for this over the last couple of nights, I noticed that they have an album and a couple of songs coming out brand new on Spotify. I like sort of separate, Brandi Carlile is obviously on my long list here. Love her work. Also like a great autobiography worth a read. I think that Brandi Carlile's story, and I think Brandi Carlile and the twin story is particularly interesting in part because for those listeners that are not familiar with Brandi Carlile, she and the set of identical twins kind of make up what is the Brandi Carlile brand.
Phil and Tim Hanseroth.
And that they've agreed, as I understand it, and y'all may know different, but they've agreed to split all of the proceeds of their work 3 ways equally. So even though Brandi Carlile is herself her own, again, sort of brand, they have very intentionally agreed to this more collaborative approach to profits from their music. And
wow, that's cool.
I love it.
That's awesome.
It's interesting you say that, Krista, because I would say I knew of Brandi Carlile, but the most exposure that I got relatively recent was to the Highwomen and how fucking cool that whole idea was. And like,
again, that notion of collaboration
totally,
that is
totally
front and center.
Yeah, and that was when that album came out, and like that fucking song "To Follow the Highwaymen" song. God damn, was that cool?
Well, and the notion, I'm gonna like geek out on the Highwomen with you, Donnie. Like, I want a house with a crowded table where there's space for everyone. Right? Like, that is fundamental to how I do my research, how I do my teaching. Right? Is like the idea that there is space for a diversity of ideas. And that is what makes music awesome. That is what makes building new ideas awesome. That is what makes access, in my case of healthcare, access to care better for everybody. Like that's fundamental. And I mean, even if you look back at my Pointer Sisters choice, that is about making sure that a group of women have access to the resources they need to be able to live and feed their families. Like, that's one of the things that I think is kind of cool and that I hope kind of comes through in this playlist, right? Is this notion of what might it look like to see the world through this really collaborative lens?
It's also interesting because we talked, my first pick was Oasis, and I talked about how their competitiveness kind of drove some of that stuff, but it's that same competitiveness in male-centered like music that also becomes so toxic and causes so many issues between whether it's like record label executives or bands themselves and the greediness and all. It's all with, you never hear about a band like I don't know, like the Bengals, like getting into issues like that, right? And it's totally toxic. Like that overly competitiveness, like I have to be the best at everything, is so just self-centered and probably does create a lot of rock stars because we tend to idolize that like individual who thinks they're the most important thing in the world. That's always drove me nuts. It's why I'm not a Rolling Stones fan. I think Mick Jagger is just an absolute piece of shit.
This is a hysterical transition to my last song. And it's fucking perfect. It's so fucking perfect.
No, wait.
And
I'm
gonna throw the fucking siblings out there and I'm gonna say it's fucking Eddie and Alex. Let's hear it.
Dude, are you serious right now?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Excellent work, Donnie.
Yep, abso-fucking-lutely. Let's tie it all together. And what's the song?
Fuck, I don't know.
I don't know either. I feel like this is the moment that Rod just needs to cut to the most misogynistic song of all time. And
is Eddie, like Eddie didn't even do interviews and shit. Like I know nothing about him on a personal level, to be honest. Like that dude, like I feel like he intentionally stood back. Sorry, we're talking about Van Halen, right? We haven't referenced it yet.
So for anyone who when Rod and Donnie and I were busy listening to Van Halen by ourselves, we're talking about the band Van Halen.
So if we hadn't referenced it yet, we're talking about Van Halen. But anyway, Eddie is such an interesting guy to me. I mean, they're Dutch too, which just brings a whole, I don't know, song. I have no idea, dude. You could give me an era.
Can you limit to Van Hagar?
Yeah,
yes. Yeah, exactly.
To have it perfectly go in flow of Krista's awesome speech, it's absolutely Van Halen and not Van Hagar. Because if we're going to talk about the shittiest frontman, it's got to be David Lee Roth for sure. It's definitely Van Halen and not Van Hagar.
Okay. I mean,
oh my God. Is it California Girls?
No, but that would have been perfect.
That would be terrible.
That would be terrible and perfect. No, it's Ain't Talking About Love. And
I don't think I would have guessed that. I would not have guessed that.
And I think that this one does. I'll be honest. I think that this song specifically buries David Lee Roth in the background a little bit because it is so fucking good from a musical perspective. Take David Lee Roth out of the equation and just let the rest of the song exist, and it's so fucking good. Like that intro guitar riff, like. I love this song for the music. I don't love this song for the song. Like this is a beautiful, like it's a really well written song. It's a really good song.
And I think that's one of the things that's always fun for me about Van Halen songs. You can always identify the Van Halen song on the riff. Immediately
you can. Immediately you can. And again, like what you're saying, Rod, I think the Van Halen brothers really did a halfway decent job of flying under the radar. Like there was beef between Eddie and David Lee Roth. I think that when Sammy Hagar got into the band, I don't know that there was as much beef. I don't know. And then the weird dude from Extreme sang for them for a while. But like the consistence of the band of Eddie and his brother Alex, and then I think Michael Anthony was the bass player. That band, despite David Lee Roth, it's like a Guns N' Roses aspect. Well, I know there was a bunch of bullshit with Guns N' Roses. That's not necessarily true, but. Again, I think that band avoided the controversy, whereas it was really focused very much on David Lee Roth. But Ain't Talking About Love is just such a fucking good song. And like Krista said, just the most recognizable riffs that you could ask for, always coming from Eddie Van Halen. Yeah. And those two brothers kind of killing it. We've talked about Eddie Van Halen a lot on the podcast when we talked about Michael Jackson. So, but again, the reason is just that like the dynamic of that band was so cool, despite David Lee Roth and despite Sammy Hagar and despite the singer of Extreme. I just think it was a great one to round it out after Krista's really awesome women empowerment that I capped that off with David Lee Roth.
I mean, I can't think of a better artist to cap off that conversation though with David Lee Roth. But I think the thing for me as also a Van Halen fan, right? Like, again, that's one of those bands that, you know, along with Led Zeppelin, along with Rush, that like, you know, get just sort of like seep into your DNA in Chicago in the 90s. I think one of the things that is cool about this choice is that it again is a band that evolves over time. That when you think about the time of the beginning of Van Halen up until Eddie Van Halen's death, you think about a band who really tried to stay relevant. Who traded off lead singers.
Kind of did. Like, I mean, Van Hagar stuff still was, I mean, shit right now was probably, I didn't look it up. I wish I would have had it already pulled up. What is Van Halen's most played song on Spotify? Like, is it like, I mean, right now, do you remember fucking right now and how big of a deal it was? It is all Van Halen stuff. It's not Van Hagar stuff.
But OU812, that album to that point, early 90s, are, kind of our experiences with, I'll call it like guitar forward rock, right? Like of that time, Van Halen figured out how to be MTV style relevant at that time. I still to this day can see in my head the video for Right Now.
100%.
As you all probably can too, right?
And the spoofs, like the Crystal Pepsi, like the fucking, or like the Crystal Gravy from Saturday Night Live. Like that song was fucking everywhere.
It was. And this is like really sad, right? But like, for those of you that remember the video for Right Now, what I remember very clearly is the video of the dog, of the golden retriever, and the key that says Right Now, God is killing moms and dogs because he has to.
That Right Now video, that's a flashback, Kristen. Like, I don't know where that fits in my mind now. Like watching it again, like it's one of those kind of, it's almost like the Runaway Train video thing, Donnie, where it's
totally,
like, it's cool.
Absolutely.
It's like really 100%. Cool that they did that. And it probably like got a lot of conversations going, but when you watch it back now, there's also a slight element of cringe to it, but there probably wasn't at the time. And it probably was pretty ballsy to do something like that at the time. I mean, especially if anything, the Right Now video, even more so. Well, I don't know. Both of them in their own way were super ballsy, but like, I mean, just big block letters about like, hey, here's shit that is uncomfortable to talk about. And we're just going to stick it on this music video.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Do you guys know who they originally approached to replace before Sammy Hagar? Replace David Lee Roth? Daryl Hall from Hall & Oates.
Shut up.
Damn. Could you imagine a Daryl Hall?
Actually, so they approached two people.
I had no idea.
They approached Patti Smith, but not the Patti Smith you're thinking of, a different Patti Smith. Patti Smith with a Y. Smith with a Y, of a band called Scandal. I am not aware of her or who she is.
Oh, yes. No, she had a popular song in the 90s. That is the other Patti Smith.
So
yes.
They approached, so it says Eddie invited her to replace Roth and she declined, and then they reached out to Daryl Hall and he also declined.
Dang, I would love to see a Daryl Hall Van Halen.
I would be curious what Van Halen sounds like with a woman front person.
Yeah. This is all very big. This one has gone on This one's gone on for a very long time. Let's knock out these honorable mentions so that I can go eat
honorable
some dinner.
Mentions.
Oh my God, right? Like I have papers to grade. Are we ready?
All right. Same order. Roderick, what is your honorable mention?
I had the Bee Gees on here, of course.
Yeah.
Barry, Robin, and Maurice. Nice. How Deep Is Your Love? But the one I almost picked and I replaced with CCR, I'm going to say Gwen and Eric and see if you guys know the band.
Oh, that's no doubt for sure.
There's no doubt.
Knows that band immediately.
Yeah. I was going to pick No Doubt and I was going to pick Sunday Morning, and it's just, it's incredible and they're awesome.
That's a good song.
Yeah.
It's
a fun song.
There was too much 90s already, so I went CCR. But there you go.
So much 90s. It's true.
Crapsta. What's your
my honorable mentions list? Man, this was hard. I got to tell you. All right. So top of the list, my honorable mentions, again, 1990s, Breeders' Last Splash.
Mm-hmm. We've had a Breeders song. Have we had a Breeders song?
Yeah, I had the Breeders. I believe I had the Breeders on the first episode.
Yeah, we've had a Breeders song.
Yeah, right.
Cannonball.
Absolutely. And then my other honorable mention was Tegan and Sarah. How Come You Don't Want Me?
God, I love Tegan and Sarah.
Are they siblings? Did I not know that?
Oh my God, okay, if you have not yet, highly encourage your next vacation, you have to listen to their autobiography, not read it.
Do they
Like, that's one
narrate
of
their
those
own
books-
autobiography?
They read their own autobiography, hearing them kind of go back and forth with each other.
Yeah.
It's one you have to
You know what's
listen
wild?
to. It's so great.
I'm looking at them right now. They're obviously siblings. They look exactly alike. Why did I not know that? Had I never seen a music video? I've definitely seen their music videos because I worked at Journeys in my life, which means I...
Oh my gosh, then yes, you absolutely saw Tegan and Sarah videos.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know. Also,
Love Tegan and Sarah. Again, I have a list of bands that are my like list of the kids are going to be all right kind of bands. Tegan and Sarah's on that list.
also didn't know they were Canadian, but there you go.
I had Sly and the Family Stones, If You Want Me to Stay.
That's a good
So-
one. Yeah.
And again, I would have gotten into the bass line, but we went bass line heavy in this
We went
episode.
bass heavy.
It's hard.
We
Yeah.
went bass heavy. Yeah.
And
Good
then
choice, though.
the second one was going to be a follow-up to my Get Up Kids offering, and it was going to be My Chemical Romance, and it was going to be Head First and Halos off their very first album. And I have a really amazing story about the first time I saw My Chemical Romance and like the moment of me seeing that band. I'm going to save that for maybe another episode that My Chemical
I
Romance
was going
might
to say
end
you
up
got
on.
to save that for just like a hard sad.
I don't have an
episode.
MCR connection at all, Donnie, so I didn't even know they were siblings.
They're your Radiohead, so we're good.
Okay. Yeah, no connection. Nobody had Jackson 5, which I feel like a shitty Hoosier, but whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as an adopted Hoosier, I also feel shitty about that. And at the same time, I feel like they've gotten plenty of
That's true.
podcast love.
Yeah. All right, let me fire out this list for us. Okay,
Yep.
So we kicked it off with Rod with Oasis Champagne Supernova. Is it Haim or Haim? It's Haim, right?
It's Haim, because like L'Chaim, right,
Got
is
it.
to life.
Okay.
Their last name,
So we got-
Haim, like life.
Haim, The Wire, which I fucking love that song. The Get Up Kids Holiday, The Beach Boys God Only Knows, The Pointer Sisters Fairy Tale, The Darkness, with a big stretch of the bands. We got a lot of the bands on here, so we're gonna have to keep that in mind for the band episode as well. The Darkness, I Believe in a Thing Called Love, Radiohead, Jigsaw Falling into Place, The Bangles, Manic Monday, Stone Temple Pilots, Big Empty, CCR, Bad Moon Rising, Joseph, White Flag, and Van Halen, Ain't Talking About Love.
How to make a mixtape.
Thanks for being on, dude.
Thank you. It was great to
Thank
meet you,
for having
Krista.
me. This was a lot of fun. It was like the most work I put into a non-work thing this week,
Nice.
which
Yeah.
is not saying much for my workout routine.
Yeah.
This was a good time. Hey, big shout out to Hanson too, who didn't get a mention until now. But I'm gonna call out.
No
I'm gonna
Hanson
call out the
until now.
Hanson brothers.
They really are bummed that they didn't end up on the list. Stoked to have you, Krista. Thanks, Rod, for another awesome episode. Good luck editing this
Thank
long
you.
one down.
So much
Appreciate
fun.
it.
Thanks, dudes.
Thanks. Bye.